Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Sporting Limerick's soccer podcast, where we're in high spirits after positive results at the weekend for both Treaty senior men's team and senior women's team, and a very positive start to the season for Treaty United senior men's team. Noel, to start with yourself, really good 3 points against Wexford at home, in the 1-0 victory last Friday, 4 points from a possible 6 opening 2 games. Could we have asked for much more?
I doubt it. I don't think so. It's been a brilliant start, and they've yet to concede a goal. I thought, again, similar characteristics to what they showed against Bray. They're showing some really good character in terms of their will to win and their desire and their honesty, and how they're prepared to really muck in and get behind the ball and make it very difficult for the opposition. That's something that's more of a mentality. It shows the kind of honesty that's in the group, and it's certainly very, very good to see, and certainly will be important in the future. But that you talk about getting good players in, but if their attitude isn't right, you can be in trouble. But certainly the attitude of this group is absolutely spot on.
Yeah, that's probably the most pleasing thing, isn't it, Jason? Because it's very hard to change players' attitude if it's poor, from being poor to having a very good attitude. You kind of need that from the start. We seem to be seeing that from the 13 to 14 players that have been used so far. Anyway, 2 clean sheets, which is the benchmark for winning any game. Are you pleased with what you've seen in the opening 2 games?
Oh, it's fantastic, Adrian. There's a real hunger about the side to get results, and I suppose, look, the real challenge will be when they go behind in a game. That's going to be the real challenge for Treaty. Up to this, they've kind of had something to hang on to from the beginning of the game to the end, and that stood them in good stead. Very dogged in their approach. Unfortunately, the only downside, another red card. Tried to defend Sean McSweeney a little bit last week for his red card, but Clyde O'Connell, it's very hard to defend him. 2 yellows in the space of 5 minutes. Can't be defended, and it upset the whole team, really. It impacted a lot of the sides. But look, hats off to the rest of the group. They really stood firm, and even when you look at the subs that came in, I was impressed with Callum McNamara, putting his body on the line, blocking shots up to the 90th minute, and he's someone that comes with a good pedigree. My colleague in the FEI, Dennis Hines, working for the association for 15 years, has seen it all in Clare, and he speaks very highly of Callum McNamara. So he could be a good addition as the weeks progress. Mark Ludden's long throw is an asset that I think we have to make more of. Put bodies in the box, get second balls off it. We didn't create a whole pile, but listen, 4 points in 2 games, Adrian. No one is arguing with anything. It's fantastic stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely great to see the results coming that way. Noel, as Jason mentioned, obviously the big downside is we are opening 2 games. We've had 2 red cards, and considering the Treaty women's side, Jenna Slattery, she was also sent off at the weekend. There's 3 red cards for Treaty teams in 4 games, and we get a reputation for being a bit of a dirty team. But no, in all seriousness, though, Noel, Clyde O'Connell's, particularly his second yellow card, it just shows you the difference now, as Tommy Barrett actually alluded to in the interview after the game, where he said that was his kind of trademark. You go in hard in the midfield area, leave some in on your opponent as well as win the ball, but you just can't do that now. And actually, Clyde was definitely well over exuberant, and that will disappoint Tommy, because he cannot afford to go through games with this group, obviously down to 10 men on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he's going to miss it. He's going to get a dip, I suppose, and he's missing the next game. Probably will get another game, and that'll be 3 games already that, he'll have missed. I think they probably need to look at it in terms of, guys being a bit more disciplined in, how they defend, the game, particularly at that level. You can't go off your feet. You need to stay on your feet. You need to jockey, get nice and close, get the opposition's head down, more than think that you have to win the ball. That it isn't a case of 100% I win the ball or 0% if I don't. You can delay the opposition, you can slow them down, you can turn them, you can force them backwards. And, it takes a bit of mental discipline, that. Now, obviously, Clyde is a defender himself, so he should be well up for that. But, you know, the idea that guys can just dive in and, you know, and gamble, if you like, in terms of winning the ball, in my experience, good players don't gamble. And it's probably something that they're going to have to look at because, you know, as well as, you know, being down to 10 men, as you said, you don't really want to get a name for getting someone sent off every week. You need to know that these referees, like, you know, like ourselves talking tonight, they'll be talking to each other as well. And they'll be saying, oh, I was ref in treaty last week and this happened, and I was ref in treaty the week before and that happened. And, you know, then players, you know, the referee will have a kind of a notion about him, for want of a better word, you know, before the game starts. And as soon as he does something out of the way, he won't get the benefit of the doubt. And that's something that you don't really want to happen.
Yeah, definitely. We might not get the UEFA prize for fair play if things keep going, but hopefully it doesn't manifest itself in that manner. Jason, I actually put it to Tommy after the game that in pre-season, in the early stages of pre-season, that you said you had concerns about how long the ball has been played around the back five in particular, and that you didn't feel it was being mixed a lot. I did put it to him that did he feel that criticism was answered by the fact that they have been a lot more direct in the first couple of games, but he also said that he feels that you know, they've probably gone to the other way as well, in that they have been able to, you know, they have been able at times to maybe use the ball better and haven't done so. What's your own take on that?
Well, look, they've got two very good results, Adrian, so I suppose, yeah, you can't be too critical of the approach, and neither can I, but if I was to give one criticism of it, on Friday night, it was Clyde in particular, and even Jack, when he's in there in the centre mid, they look to come and get the ball off the back four, but it's where the ball goes from there I've an issue with. Most of the time, Clyde was coming in, he was taking possession, and then he was just recycling it back again to another member of the back four. Personally, I'd like to see the ball go forward to Kieran Hanlon. We know a bit quicker, even. We know he doesn't run the channels, but he could go into his feet a bit more and we could get to midfield a little bit higher up. That would be my own approach, Adrian. If we could clear the passing lines maybe from full-backs or even centre-backs into Kieran's feet, you'd hold up the ball and then maybe we can do a little bit more playing in the opposition half. I don't see really the benefit of moving the ball around the back four. And as I said, there's a tendency to do that a little bit. Even on Friday, the ball was coming into Clyde, as I said, he wasn't turning and playing forward. And the best midfield players play forward at the very first opportunity, Adrian. So moving away from the back four into the middle of the park, I'd like the midfielders to play forward more, obviously with quality. You know, we look to play forward always. It's what quality have we got to do that into Red's feet, and then maybe can we play from there?
Yeah, Noel, obviously everything is rosy when you're picking up results, and we could have been looking at this in another way otherwise, but you have obviously a result now picked up as well without your number one goalkeeper the other night and a clean sheet, which is great. Shane Cusack was between the goals on last Friday with Ty Ryan out with a thigh strain or a quad actually, and also Charlie Fleming was out, and we haven't actually seen Joe Collins or Connor Melody either yet, who have been, you know, very people have been very positive in how they've talked about those two men from Galway as well, and they really did impress. So, you know, they're apparently only a couple of weeks away from fitness, so, you know, obviously we'd be hoping to see those players come back, and then you'll have that bit more competition in the squad as well.
Yeah, and like maybe a bit more of an attacking threat, certainly with Connor Melody as well, you know. I thought McKevitt did well actually when he came on. Thought he stretched them a little bit and took a bit of pressure off the back four. It was something that we had said early doors, that we would have had a worry that we might end up being too deep. And obviously, you know, we are saying this now on the back of the 2 clean sheets and the latest win. But as Jason said earlier on there, if they do happen to go a goal down, which is probably sure to happen in some game, and they are so deep, you know, it's going, like, that's going to be the test in terms of, can we create a bit of an attacking threat? And he's right about Mark Ludden. I thought Mark Ludden was outstanding again on Friday night. He's so solid defensively. He set piece deliveries, obviously his long throws, his kind of coolness as well. But I think most of our attacking threat, even though there wasn't a lot of it, came up that left-hand side. And certainly the guys coming back, you know, the likes of Dean George as well, hopefully they'll actually give it a bit more. Now, in fairness to Tommy, he said it'll take a few weeks to get that, you know, attack and flow, if you like, going in the team. And he's right, because you certainly need to start, you know, being solid at the back first and then work on that. But I suppose we have to be a bit patient and wait to see what kind of attacking threat that they do bring, and hopefully that they don't wait until they are a goal down before they start, you know, to look for an equaliser or to look to get into the final third of the opposition.
Yeah, definitely. And Jason, last week we waxed lyrical about the importance of set pieces on the show, particularly with how weak we perceived Wexford to have been when defending them against Cavantilly. And lo and behold, the goal from Anthony O'Donnell came from a set piece, a great delivery from Mark Ludden and a flick on from Jack Lynch. I think Jack Lynch probably thought he was going to score himself, but Anthony O'Donnell was there to steer it home, and a great moment for the Cork man. But it just goes to show you, if you do have a solid defensive platform, Treaty do have threats from set pieces, and it is very important in this division as well as any division really in football.
Oh, set pieces, Adrian, are over a season, they're probably worth 12 to 15 goals to you if you have a good repertoire. And look, the fact that Treaty are keeping clean sheets just adds more power to that. Just a word on Shane Cusack. You mentioned him there. I'm not too sure who's the deputy here. There isn't a whole pile, in my opinion, between Tygrind and Shane Cusack, and that was one position that I thought Tommy recruited very, very well in. Cusack looked very confident on Friday and made an early save from Doherty, which only increased that confidence. But the fact, I suppose, Noel is talking about him sitting deep, and I agree with him. The one advantage Tygrind would have over Shane Cusack for me is his ability to sweep behind. And that gives the defence a little bit of an opportunity to push up. Look, as we said with Kieran Hanlon, and it's not a criticism, but his game isn't running in behind. If we could get a bit of pace up there, Dean George, Adam Foley, even Conor Melody, these type of players, we might be able to invite teams on and hit them on the counter. So that might help the transition, I suppose, to attacking for Treaty at the moment, because I keep going back to this. While they have something to hang on to, their defensive solidity is excellent. Mark Walsh, again, in the middle of the field, can't go without a mention. Really no nonsense. And you look at him and you look at the comment that Tommy made about Clyde O'Connell putting in a tackle and leaving a piece on the opposition. Mark Walsh has been doing that for the last couple of games, and he hasn't been drawing attention from the referees. So maybe a bit of work for Mike McCarthy to do on the psychology side with a couple of the players around their discipline on the pitch.
Yeah, then definitely possibly worthwhile. We now move on to the opposition on Friday, Cobh Ramblers. I know we discussed how difficult it would be to travel to St. Coleman's Park, or UCD definitely showed us maybe it isn't as difficult as we thought with a 4-0 win. But no, it was crazy to see the chalk and cheese performance between Cobh when they went to Cork the week before, Turner's Cross. It definitely should have got at least a draw out of that game if we're going by chances created, particularly in the second half. Really good chances created by a number of their players. 2 defensive lapses, which is probably uncharacteristic of Cobh, considering they only conceded 20 goals in the whole of last season, cost them against Cork. Next, you fast forward a week, and there seemed to be very little, intensity in the performance against UCD. All around the park. UCD weren't particularly good themselves, to be honest, on the night. They didn't have to be. Cobh, didn't press them as aggressively against Cork. Are you surprised by the start that Cobh made no points on the board? And they'll be wounded Annabelle, obviously, coming to Mark's Field now Friday.
They certainly will. Well, the first game in Turner's Cross was always a kind of a 50-50 one, and they probably should have nicked a point. And it just shows you how tough it is to get results and points in this league. The second game, in fairness to them, and I watched a good bit of it, they actually played very well until UCD scored. And the first goal in these games is so huge. And look, we obviously saw it ourselves here on Friday night. Like, it changes the whole dynamic. The real, I suppose, triumph for UCD was they were playing with a back three, and the 3 of them were outstanding and really didn't give Cobh a sniff. And it was like they kind of, sucked all that drive out of them, really. They just kind of completely bottled them up in the final third, and they seemed to lose a lot of hope, particularly when the second goal went in. But it's at the start of the season. It's a time when, form is topsy-turvy and, teams are finding their feet. And you're right about the wounded animal. Will Treaty say, have we a handy one now? UCD are after beating them 4-0. But look, I'm sure that they'll be preparing for it. They'll be desperate for points. And it's probably another 50-50 game.
Yeah, and Cobh will probably be looking at it, Jason. The last time they lost their opening 2 games in the first division, they claim, was when Stephen Henderson brought them to the title in 2007. So they might be, hoping for better days ahead. I noticed that one of their former players and the former Cork City and Shamrock Rovers striker Graham Cummins, who writes for the Echo up in Cork, Echo Live, he was critical of the fight from Cobh in the second period in particular. To be honest with you, in my opinion, I didn't see a lack of fight. I definitely saw a lack of quality in the Cobh display. I don't know if they could be heavily criticised about their lack of fight, Jason. But if I am to be right and Graham is to be wrong, it's probably more worrying for Stuart Ashton that that the lack of quality is there at the moment. What's your own take on it?
Yeah, look, it's early days, Adrian. I certainly didn't predict a 4-0 win for UCD. And watching the game, Cobh started quite well, I felt. No, I wouldn't agree there was a lack of fight. I'd be more inclined to agree with you around the lack of quality. But they had a couple of chances early on before UCD hit them with 2 goals before half-time. Liam Kerrigan on the double for UCD, and that kind of knocked Cobh back. They tried to go route 1 in the second half, and that'll be something I'm sure Tommy Barrett will be aware of. They brought on James Higgerty and kind of lumped it forward in the hope of causing UCD some problems. Obviously UCD broke away then and tacked on the third or the final goal, I should say, from Paul Whelan. But 2 defeats now from Cobh. They will need a result against Treaty. Would agree with Noel, a wounded animal. I don't think Treaty will take anything for granted. We hear Tommy regularly saying that they're behind everyone and stuff like that. But they will have a bit of confidence. The group will need a bit of managing this week because they'll be confident to get something off Cobh, but it's certainly not a given.
Yeah, it is a massive game, Noel. And to be fair, Treaty will come into this almost feeling in one way because of the start they've made. It's more of a free hit for them, whereas there's a tiny bit of pressure on Cobh now to get points on the board. And if they were to target the game at the start of the year, particularly because, UCD and Cork have been tipped to be up in the playoff spots, they would have said, well, we have to get 3 points in Limerick. You'd imagine if you were in the Cobh camp. And there's also an extra bit of spice added to the game, Noel, with the fact that 4 players who all started across the midfield 4 last Saturday are all ex-Limerick FC players, which would be known to a lot of us: Ian Turner, Dave O'Leary, Darren Murphy and Lee Devitt. Speaking about those players, Lee Devitt was always a very consistent performer. I know his teammates and manager called him the silent assassin because they didn't hear from him much, but when he was out in the pitch, he was fully committed and almost like a different person. He was always quite consistent, but we saw 2 sides to the other 3 players when they were at Limerick. I mean, if you had the 2015 Ian Turner, you'd be particularly worried if you were Mark Ludden because he was able to get to the byline, get crosses, get goals. But if you get to 2017 Ian Turner that was with Limerick, you wouldn't be as worried. And you could say similar about the other players too.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think we've said, like, Cobh are probably the biggest rivals for Limerick. Obviously, for Cobh, Limerick are probably their second biggest rivals, and they will be desperate for points, And I think it won't be just those 4 lads. I think all the Cobh team will be anxious to, to get something on the board, and they might go direct as well, but it'll be a real battle. They'll probably have looked at the game last week as well. In fairness to Wexford, they played very well on the night. They played a lot of football. They created a few chances. And it was just one of those nights where, if maybe they'd gone a goal up, well, then the whole psychology of the game would have changed. And I suppose Stuart Ashton will be probably more concerned the fact that they conceded 4 goals and thinking, well, we certainly can't go down to Limerick now and, concede a couple of soft goals early on, because the way Limerick are set up, our Treaty are set up, we certainly won't get anything out of this game as well. So it'd probably be a cagey affair at the start. But as I said already, it's the first goal in these games are absolutely massive.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of goals, obviously you'd be hoping to get Kieran Hanlon off the mark as quickly as possible as well, Jason. I was looking at the John Kavanagh and Charlie Lyons, the centre-back partnership, and I did say that if the service is right, in my own head I was saying, if the service is right to Kieran Hanlon, I definitely think they're two lads that we can cause trouble to. I'm not sure if you agree with that one.
Oh, I do, Adrian, and that was my point earlier. That would be the point for me to work on now this week with the treaty group, would be how we get the ball forward with quality to Kieran Hanlon. Then can we get bodies around him? Look, we know he's not going to run people. That's not Kieran's game, but his physicality, his touch, his ability to bring people into the game, that will allow Treaty to create chances if the service is correct to him. And look, we look at Edward McCarthy. I was banging the drum to kind of get him into the middle of the park, that he was out of position on the wing. And I felt for him a little bit on Friday. He was in there. He looked good in patches. But look, similar to Kieran Hanlon, when you're playing off the striker or that third midfield player, you depend on quality, you depend on service, you depend on people giving the ball to your feet so that you can create things. And that's the challenge now for Mark Walsh, and whether it's Jack Lynch is back in the middle of the field or whoever's in that hole in two positions, and including the back four, that they've had a little bit of quality on the ball now to allow people like Kieran Hanlon to make the most of the opportunities against the opposition.
Yeah, absolutely. I was speaking to Sean McSweeney briefly on Friday, and I mentioned to him, Noel, like you suggested that I told him he may have got a hat-trick if he was on the pitch. It didn't work out like that in the game. As you said, Wexford had a lot of the ball and played very good football and created a lot of good chances. Definitely should have scored one or two anyway, for sure. You'd imagine with the chances they got. But outside of the enforced change, where obviously Clyde O'Connell now is suspended, do you see Tommy making drastic changes for the game on Friday night against Cobh?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, he'll be looking at the injuries. You'll be thinking that if Charlie Fleming is fit, he'll probably bring him back in and put Jack into the middle. You'd expect McSweeney to come back in as well. I don't really know what he's doing with the keepers. If Ty Ryan had, I don't know how bad his thigh strain is, but he was fit enough to get his place on the bench. And I'm just wondering maybe that Tommy had decided, a couple of weeks before the start of the season that, he was going to rotate them, certainly for the first two games. He certainly gets food for thought this week, I'd say, as Jason mentioned already. But no, I couldn't see too many changes. We said that even during the preseason, that it was important for guys to get game time, to get used to each other, because it's such a new squad. And, thankfully it's worked well so far. And I certainly, if I was Tommy, I wouldn't be thinking about making too many changes.
Yeah, Jason, do you agree with Noel that changes will be minimal considering the start as well?
Well, definitely. The strength of our back four. We saw Jack Lynch moving back to right back, and obviously he played a lot there for Galway last year. So he's familiar with the position, but I prefer him in the middle of the park. I prefer him in that holding midfield position, and I thought Charlie Fleming was doing really well. It was a hamstring that Charlie picked up, so we're not sure if he's going to be available. But no, keep the changes at a minimum. The subs, as Noel said, he mentioned McKevitt came off the bench last Friday and definitely impacted the game. Give us that option to stretch Wexford a little bit. So knowing that we have people, Adrian, on the bench that can impact the game is very, very important. But getting a settled back four, if you want to include the keeper, a settled back five is very, very important. And you're looking at that at the moment, and people are picking themselves really when they're available. So minimal changes. McSweeney would have to be in the team for me. There's no doubt about that, the quality that he has. But no, would expect much of the same from Tommy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Noel, it's a point I forgot to mention earlier that I wanted to bring up. I had said to you that there is concern in Cobh about the Cobh home form at the back end of last season, and obviously now in the first game of this season, considering the nature of the defeat. I know that maybe UCD have a hex on them because UCD beat them 6-0 at St. Colman's Park back in September, even when Cobh were going for the playoffs. Obviously, they couldn't manage to beat Shamrock Rovers B on the final night to get a playoff spot as well. there seems to be concern about the form of Cohen's Park. And I know we obviously said it's a very difficult place to go, but judging from Saturday night, do you think that maybe they might struggle at home, or is it obviously way too early to tell?
I think it's too early to tell. And I suppose in one thing, like, go back 10 or 12 years ago, I think the pitch certainly has improved as well. The personnel that, they had a lot of more, older, more experienced guys years ago, and, they just made it into a battle, and they made it into fortress. I think football has changed a little bit, and, the players are different. They want to play. We've actually said it here already about Treaty, and, I'm sure even some of what we're saying about, maybe having a bit more of a attacking now in the team, I'm sure some of the players are probably thinking the same way. So, I mean, the game is less of a battle, I think, than it used to be. And I think that has kind of affected their home form, but it certainly is too early to say whether their home form is very poor. I'm sure they're going to have to play a few more games yet before we can make that statement.
Yeah, and now on to the favourite part of the week, looking at the results from the week before. The few surprises if you were to go by us and in our predictions as a whole, but the big shock, obviously, Jason, was the defeat for Galway in Athlone, and the nature of it to be 3-0 down after a half an hour. No one could certainly see that coming, surely.
No, Noel definitely didn't see it coming anyway. Look, we knew the quality that Adrian Carberry had signed, and I suppose we all agreed that the challenge for him was, could he get the team to gel? There was no evidence of that in pre-season, obviously, but they've hit the ground running, as you said, 3-0 up inside 26 minutes. It was an own goal that got them underway, I suppose. But Stephen Meany hit 2 for him, and they were in cruise control then. Good value for the win. It wasn't a smash and grab effort. Wick stayed outstanding by all accounts for them, and he hit the crossbar, and Curtis Byrne hit the crossbar. So the gap could have been even more. So Athlone, really, really good value. Worries for Galway, most definitely. More of a consolation goal they got late on, and that was a mistake by Micheál Slingerman even that added to that. But Athlone really hit the ground running. They've made a fantastic start, and they've a big game, I suppose. Coming up, they drew a UCD in the opening game, but they have to travel to Cork next week, so that's going to be a tough game for them, but a fantastic start for Adrian.
Absolutely, and to be fair to you, Noel, we were kind of on the same boat, I suppose, about Athlone to a certain degree. We weren't quite as harsh as pushing them for 10th place, but in your defence, I suppose, Stephen Meany, we hadn't seen much of him in pre-season, and he started very well for Athlone too. But to move on to Cork City, this is another one that won't shed me and Jason into a good light either. Kevin Teely early top of the table, big win for them over Cork City, 1-0 at home in Stradbrook. That was a super win for Kevin Teely, Noel, and obviously Cork will be disappointed too.
They will, and I kind of touched on that. I just felt that this Cork team, I wonder, were they kind of ready for the first division? Certainly going to places like Cabinteely where they'd have had no experience of being there or no clue what it's like. And we did say with the likes of Pat Devlin and Eddie Gormley still around Cabinteely, why they may be light in kind of known players in the league. They'd certainly be well organised, and it was such a big game for them as well. Like, you have Cork City coming to town, and even though they are in the first division, a lot of guys would relish the chance to play against them, and that's something that that Cork are going to have to manage, if you like, and get used to, and certainly up their game, because it must have been a very disappointing result for them. And again, there's going to be pressure on them this weekend now to bounce back from that result. Yeah,
there certainly will. Jason, I must admit myself, I didn't watch this game, and I'm probably a bit disappointed that I didn't, but the Shelbourne and Bray game seemed to be a thriller, 6-goal thriller. Share the spoils as well. Bray were obviously leading going into the latter stages of it. Probably shows how good a point it was for Treaty as well up in Bray. But share the spoils by all accounts appears to be a fair result.
Yeah, I suppose overall they'll both be happy with it. Like Bray levelled the game twice, Adrian, before taking the lead. And, Noel touched on it last week. When you come from behind to get a point, it feels like a win, he said. And sometimes if you're ahead and you get pegged back, it feels like a defeat. But, a very, very good game. The worry for Bray, I suppose, overall would be Gary Shaw going off injured again and breaking down. That looks like a big problem for him, and they also have his replacement, Lynch, out injured as well. So they're very light up front. They actually pushed Brendan Kavanagh into the forward role in the second half, and he got their third goal, a great strike from 25 yards. But yeah, two very, very good teams, and you rightly say that, and we agreed with you like that, the Treaty result against Bray looks even more beneficial now. Shells, 2 draws. They'll be looking to get off. They'll be looking for a win to keep themselves with the pace, I suppose. They may be a bit fortunate. I saw the penalty that was awarded. Georgie pointed. It looked a little bit harsh, and he tucked it away. But look, two very, very good teams, and they'll be in the mix at the end of the season, Adrian.
Yeah, and Jason, briefly to stick with you, your prediction for Friday night between Treaty and Cobh Ramblers?
I'm going to stick with Treaty. It's hard to go against them with the early season form, but it's with a bit of caution, Adrian. I think a draw would be a very, very good result, because I think that Cobh now are really going to be gunning for a victory. If they come out all guns blazing and they get into a lead, it could be difficult for Treaty. There could be a couple of goals in this one, Adrian. I'm hoping for a Treaty win, but maybe a draw.
Yeah, there you have it. And Noel, what's your own prediction?
Yeah, I suppose I'm thinking along the lines of a draw as well. I think Treaty will be happy with a draw just to keep the unbeaten run going. And I suppose Cobh, while they will be desperate to win the game, I'm sure if they were told that they get a point on Friday night, they'd probably take it, in the position they're in at the moment. So I am favouring a draw for the weekend.
Yeah, it's great. Been great to have you with us again tonight, lads. And I'm also going to put it out there to any of our listeners, if there is any, should I say, out there, that we're trying to come up with a name for this Sport Limerick Soccer podcast as well. And much like Treaty United, putting it out there to a vote of their own their program name. We'd be hoping to have any suggestions maybe in the comment section under this video as to what the podcast should be named, and please keep it PG if possible to anyone as well, and don't take out any personal hatred on any of the three of us either, if that was possible, if that's not too much to ask. So yeah, we'd welcome any suggestions for the Sport Limerick Soccer podcast, and thanks very much, guys.